Welcome back, fellow aqua composers. Today we're going to do a sunflower tutorial. So working wet on wet, we are going to do the background first. So I'm taking my time, making sure that the paper is really well saturated first. Going in between the petals of the sunflower so that when the paint spreads, it doesn't get on the sunflower. So go ahead, use a wider brush if you have it for the bigger areas to wet. Now we're going to drop in the colors that we see on the reference photo. I'm making them more brilliant. I tend to have a lot of vibrancy in my style. So I am using a nice bright blue here. I think this is magnesium blue I'm using. So as you can see from the palette, my color is like a milk consistency. Since we've already wet our paper, I don't want to oversaturate the paint. So it goes on nice and bright. Quick tip is all the colors that we're going to be using, if you wet them ahead of time and make yourself big puddles, it'll go on a lot faster and won't have to work against the drying paper quite as much. So this green that I've picked up is a bit of leaf green. It's almost like a yellow green. It's nice and vibrant. And the darker blue, I believe, is marine blue, mixed with some indigo. There's a stage in watercolor painting called the ugly stage. And I know it doesn't look like much yet, but it will turn out really pretty. We're just laying down the fuzzy background, trying to drop in all the colors that we see here. So I've picked up my green. And dropping that in. So there's parts of the painting that are a lot darker in value. So I'm bringing forth the darker blues again. So this reference photo, a lot of the leaves were cut out, but I just used your imagination and drew the rest of the leaves in longer. I actually had to re-record this first step of the painting for you guys because I forgot to press record when I did the painting the first time around for one section of it. Going over that middle part of the flower, trying not to make it stand out too much because it is a fuzzy background. But there are browns in that area. Now that our background is dry here, we're adding in the middle. So the very middle part of the flower, I am using a lemon yellow, which is a cool yellow. It pulls on the green side. As you can tell, there's like a slight greenish hue. But then as the middle starts to spread out towards the petals, it becomes warmer in color. So then I'm bringing forth my ISO yellow deep. I'm even adding leaf green to that middle section. There'll be a lot of layers built up on the middle part. So taking our lightest yellow, we're just going to start putting paint on the petals. This is working wet on dry. And this is our first coat on the petals. Little areas between the petals, we will go over those with some background colors in a little bit. This color is a super sunny color, guys. It is so bright. Such a happy flower. Adding details to the middle of the flower. This is a very yellowy orange color. I'm using it very thick, kind of like a half and half consistency. Now I'm doing like a stipple type of texture, and I am using yellow ochre. Pulling in some of that ISO yellow to the center. The ISO yellow is a very warm yellow, so it leans towards the oranges and reds. I'm just kind of trying to feather it in towards the center. Using some burnt sienna to really bring forth some warmness. Okay, then getting closer to the actual color of the flower. Going back over, doing a stippling texture again with some burnt sienna. Like have a mixture of the burnt sienna with the ISO yellow. Building up these different layers slowly. If you look at the value of the color, the center of the flower in the reference photo, and the layer that we're working on now, we're nowhere near as dark as what we need to be. But this is the stage that we do things slowly and develop our colors. Adding more of that greenish yellow to the middle, blending it out. So I'm trying a different color here, different darkness to see how that's going to blend in this wet area, doing the stippling effect, and used combination of burnt sienna and Van Dyke brown. So stipple type of painting is a very tedious, time-consuming process, but in order to get the texture that the flower is, I think it's a good technique to use here. Around that inner rim of the flower, there's a lot of shadow, so I'm trying to build up that brown. Now that the paint is dry, I'm going through adding second layer of color onto the petals. So I have like a grayish yellow color dropping in some of the shadows and lines. Parts of the petals are deeper in color, deeper orange, and so this is straight iso yellow I'm using. I changed the temperature of the leaves here to more warmth. It's on the second layer of color where we start to see our paintings start to really come together and not look as ugly. Sometimes it's really hard to get past the ugly stage, but you have to remember we're painting in layers. That's the cool thing about watercolor, is that you see the layers underneath. This reminds me of glass windows, all those beautiful colors that are luminous. The shadow color again. This is just neutral tint with a little bit of yellow mixed in. Very, very watery consistent with the neutral tint because it's a very strong color. Basically, we just keep working around on our petals, looking at the reference photo, adding these various different warmer colors and the shadows. And that's what makes our petals look realistic and gives them some dimension. Filling in the background where there's little peeks through the petals. It looks really dark, but remember, it'll dry lighter. Building up our layers again. You could really tell the petals are coming to life now. Continue to work around your flower, adding these darker yellows and shadows. Stippling some more. This time I really got an orangey color. I'm using burnt sienna here, pretty much straight burnt sienna. And just kind of like, not even stippling, but doing just like, almost like little half C's, little scribbles to layer on more texture. It's kind of like I'm drawing at this point. So just keep going around the rim, making these little scribble marks with your burnt sienna. drop in and do wet on wet with this burnt sienna. When you work wet on wet, it'll have a softening effect on the edges. You won't get hard edges. So I'm trying to mimic the textures that I'm seeing in the middle of this flower. Going back to the petals while I wait for the middle to dry. So this detail layer that we're putting on the petals, this is working wet on dry. We didn't pre-wet them, we're just adding more color and vibrancy with these additional layers. Now I'm just using a damp brush to lift up some of the color. When we lift off color, we'll be able to see the layers underneath better. It gives it more three-dimension. Adding more vibrancy with the ISO yellow. Another layer will have the leaves more darker. Going back to the center of the flower. I'm trying to add these kind of longer, sort of hashtaggy type of stipples to represent the seeds in the middle. Working from the center out, and changed my color to a very light brown, and I'm just very lightly touching the paper to get these seed textures. And if you were to zoom in on the reference photo, it actually has this kind of pattern of these concentric circles that all meet in the middle, and I'm just sort of trying to mimic that pattern. It's easier to make the hashtag, not hashtags, but these little etches when I pull the paint towards me. I'm just adjusting the paper. Adding Van Dyke Brown. And just keep going around and stippling with the brown, and it really adds a lot of texture. Yeah, I screwed up here, guys. I'm sorry. I added in another layer of the grayish yellow for shadows, and I forgot to press record. So right now I'm just lifting up. This is a chisel brush. It has a really good snap to it. And when you lift paint up in this fashion, as I was saying before, we can see the color of the previous layers, which is lighter, of course. And it makes the petals look so three-dimensional. So wherever I see the highlights on the leaves is where I am lifting paint. Some paper lifts a lot easier than others. I'm using arches, and you have to work at it to lift it. So you might not have to have such a damp brush depending on what paper you're using. Some papers lift like almost too good, and it's actually hard to get layers. Usually the student grades are like that, so if you could afford a better paper, you'll actually learn a lot faster. And you won't get frustrated. That being said, guys, I would suggest the Fabriano 25% cotton paper for students and beginners. I thought that the paint actually went on really good. Was very dramatic in colors. The colors stayed vibrant, and the lifting was pretty good too. It didn't lift too easily, which is nice when you're trying to build layers. You don't want to try to lift and then it takes off basically all the layers that we worked hard to achieve. Adding in more of a shadow here. Now these are the final touches. Just going through and adding in whatever last detailed lines and shadows that I need to. And that is it, guys. Sign your painting. We are done. I'm so glad that you were with me today to enjoy this lovely sunflower. Hope to see you next time.